Welcome to Modern Medical Education, an OCOM podcast, where we gather experts to discuss various topics in modern medical education, with the focus of today's show being on communications and marketing in medical education, episode 0. My name is Dr. Robert Hasty, Dean and Chief Academic Officer of OCOM. And today we have two incredible guest hosts, close personal friends of mine. The first being Rachel Freeman, Director of Communications at OCOM. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Happy to be here on episode 0.
So tell me, what is new and exciting in the world of communications at OCOM?
OCOM is very fun. I think this year it's still like a brand new year, as if nothing ever happened, because last year we were boots on the ground. I don't want to say selling a building, but now that we have an actual program to document and highlight, we have a whole new refreshing communication type thing to be able to talk about and share and showcase student stories and have a little bit more life that we can share this year. So I'm very excited. It's like a whole new year.
Yeah, it's like being real, right? Actually having medical
Yes.
students. And someone who knows that exact feeling is the founding Director of Communications, now the Vice President of Communications and Marketing at ICOM, Stephanie Dillon.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I feel like I'm patient zero in your podcast.
Yeah, it feels it. So
I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much.
yeah, so exciting to have you, Stephanie. Thanks for joining us on this, and also thanks for working through all the your patience with us as we move into the OCOM podcast studio, and we're excited to be here today. So anyway, what's new and exciting in the world of communications at ICOM, Stephanie?
Well, ICOM recently welcomed its 7th cohort of student doctors, the class of 2028. I can't believe that it's been 7 years. I still remember back in the day standing alongside you as we welcomed our inaugural class back in 2018. So it's been exciting to see the journey thus far and see how communications and marketing at ICOM has evolved over the last 8 years. So moving forward, moving ahead, and planning, big communication and marketing initiatives for the college.
Excellent. Good. Well, thanks for sharing. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about today was crisis communications. And, over the weekend, I happened to be watching, it used to be called HBO. I guess it's Max now, but they have this series on there called Charlie Hustle. And it's about Pete Rose. And, I thought it was, kind of an interesting case study on crisis communications, just coincidentally how, things always kind of work out. But anyway, Pete Rose was accused of gambling on baseball back in the 80s. And there was, pretty significant evidence that he'd actually done it. And then for years, he had actually denied it. And, now he actually admits that he did, gamble on baseball. And, subsequently he suffered the consequences for not being honest, and, still won't be inducted in the Hall of Fame, at least as of now. So anyway, I thought it was just an interesting thing, back when he had this crisis of communications back in the 80s, he was just kind of trying to sweep it under the rug, I think, and everything. So, I just wondered, given that scenario, how would you all have handled that one?
I love a good sports documentary, including that one. It's so, so good. I would have to say, if I were his publicist back in the day, I would have encouraged him, hey, we need to just be honest and upfront about it. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence against you.
Absolutely.
Notes from the bookies, conversations, recordings, things like that. I think honesty is the best policy. And I think that it's always the cover up, not the crime, right? That people remember. And so him covering it up only to then recount that in his memoir that was released, in 2002? And like 22 years later, we're still talking about it. Talking about the cover up, right? So despite the many, many people who support him and want to see him in the Hall of Fame, people just can't get past the cover up, the lying, the denying. So I think it's best to move forward and lead with honesty and transparency, and throw in a sprinkle of remorse too for him. It sounds like he's a little remorseful now, but being upfront with his emotions, the thought process behind why he did what he did, coming clean and just being honest would have been my recommendation if I were his publicist back in the day.
Absolutely. I agree, because I feel like his legacy is more of the cover up, like you said, versus what his actual accomplishments are. So that's the legacy he leads, not his actual talent and everything. So it's kind of a shame that no publicist said that before versus just deny till you die. That's only like deny till you die when you and your siblings want to cover up something with your parents. That's not a
Totally.
professional athlete move I would do.
Yeah. And it seems like the public has like very little understanding of lying. I think you could actually do something really, really bad. But if you're just honest with people, I think there's a lot of forgiveness,
Well,
especially nowadays.
The Kobe Bryant thing, I don't know if anyone remembers. Kobe cheated on his wife and had this very big press release. He denied a little bit, but he had a press release, admitted to it. But when you think back and remember Kobe Bryant, that barely comes up. It doesn't even come up on the Google search bar. So you have to really dig deep. And his legacy is more of what he did and coming clean. You don't remember that kind of stuff. So it does go to show.
Yeah.
Just admit the truth.
And of course,
Another great sports example.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, actually, that's the fun thing about sports examples, right? It's not like one of your crisis communication hassles, right?
Right.
Yeah. Although hopefully, hopefully both of you won't have to deal with too many crisis communications in the future. I can tell you, talking to, other medical school deans and, over the years, I mean, I've had friends that have had student suicides in their class. I've had friends that have had, faculty that actually, got taken away, arrested for, pretty serious, crimes and, those type of things. And, and of course, those are things that, we have to be prepared for from a communications perspective at medical schools. So, we actually,
Absolutely. I feel like there's a wide spectrum of crisis communication. It's actually my favorite branch of communication, crisis communication, that probably stems from my time as a television reporter with all the breaking news, and the more drama, the better. So I think that now that I've transitioned into more public relations, I just naturally gravitate toward crisis. And it's not to say that I feel like every school will experience some degree of crisis. For example, at ICOM, unfortunately, we've had 2 students pass away within a 3 or 4 year span. And so being a relatively new school, to have, those unfortunate circumstances be presented to the campus, and how we communicated through those 2 instances is of utmost importance, not just to our students and faculty and staff, but the varying stakeholders who we have partnerships with as well. And I actually created a crisis communication plan, which I encourage every college to have in your communications toolkit, just a planning guide to help you walk through the steps that you should take in terms of developing the message, who disseminates it, who gets it, does every stakeholder group get a different version of the message that appeals to their direct interest and tie with the college. And it covers a wide range of things, not only student death, faculty death, shut down during a pandemic. Actually, I included, what to do, especially after COVID, when campus gets shut down, and how do we communicate that with people. And so it's a really great toolkit for me to reference, when another crisis comes along. And it's something that I think everyone should have, because in the moment it's hard to navigate your way through in the midst of a crisis. So it's nice to have something to refer to. And there's actually like template press releases in there, media advisories in there, a list of, my media contacts. And so it's a very valuable tool that I recommend everybody have.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and I think we have one of those plans too, right?
Yeah, I've definitely developed it. It's definitely not something that I've had to deal with in like my previous institutions or anything like that. However, with the transparency that Dr. Hasties had with the mental health, concerns surrounding medical students and the type of pressure that they're under, it's definitely taken what I've used in the past and moved to a more serious communication method, because I don't want to ever say when it happens, but it could absolutely. You being a new institution, having unfortunate circumstances, it's most likely going to hit us someday. So I hope to have control over that and be as delicate as possible should that come our way.
And of course, the challenge with medical schools is, it seems like almost everything's, you know, hyper focused, right, in the medical school. If it was, a lot of other type of educational institutions, I'm not quite sure if there'd be as much focus, but it just seems like the medical school, all eyes are always on a medical school, and the potential for scrutiny and those type of things. Of course, I always look at all this social media stuff, and I'll tell you, years ago, I was thinking that we'd get to some stage where we wouldn't have to worry about as much challenges with social media and social media, crisis communication issues as that we still deal with now, right? I mean, there was that famous case, I think it was just a few years ago. It was a Toro alumna. She had actually written some anti-Semitic comments on somewhere on social media, and then she was a resident up in Ohio somewhere. I think it was the Cleveland Clinic, if I recall. And these very anti-Semitic comments, surfaced, and if I recall, I think she, they ended up losing her training license and everything in the state of Ohio, if I recall the reported facts well. And then, of course, everybody remembers the Miami neurology resident who had some interesting interactions with the Uber driver on a late night down. I think it was in South Beach. But at some point, I'd have to think that we're going to get past some of these social media things for generations, but maybe not, right? Nowadays, I mean, heck, everybody's got their phone out. If there's anything interesting going on, it seems like someone's recording it. Just driving down the street, around here, seems like somebody's always video recording something. So I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see that going away. Just we're in this new age where everything is documented or saved via screenshot. And I don't think that, we necessarily think about that possibility of something that we say taken the wrong way, or maybe we're not thinking when we share thoughts. And it could be, shared, saved for all eternity. I know here at ICOM, we've, and one example I could give from years ago, we had a applicant who we accepted, and then were given some screenshots of some rhetoric that they shared online, and then we subsequently revoked their admission. I don't see that ever going away, really. I think that kind of thing is here to stay, and it gives everyone a new level of accountability. Like, not only do you have to stand behind what you say in the moment, you also have to stand behind what you've said in the last decade or so, since Instagram, Facebook, TikTok have been around.
Yeah, and I guess the understanding that stuff lives forever. So if you really think about, okay, if I have to be professional, because a lot of times doctors are just considered just like leadership in the highest regard. If that's what you're gaining and that's what you're seeking over these next couple years, when you're in school, I feel like you have to think you're already there. So the words that you say, the things that you document, how you behave, it's in public. Of course, you want to have fun and do the things while you can, but you should kind of see yourself in that picture of holding yourself to a higher standard. And if you want to have fun, just have fun in your house, maybe, or, think about the friends that you have and the group that you surround yourself with, and hopefully do better. Or if you've done some mistakes in the past, good thing is you can audit that on social media. But some things, when you say it and it's on video, it does live forever. So just thinking before you speak kind of thing. It's so hard to do in the moment, but if that's what your goal is, you don't want anything to stand in the way of your goal. And it's so easy to say it in hindsight. But if we can share it with those who are seeking to be doctors in the future, then maybe they'll think twice. Could still make a mistake, but they'll think twice about it.
Yeah, it's like a greater social issue. I know, Dr. Hasty, you and I both have young girls, and so I'm sweating bullets for the day that my daughter is like, get me an Instagram account. I don't know how I'm going to handle that.
Mm.
Yeah, my daughter is 14. We have yeah, she's actually not on social media yet, so um, so it's just one of those things. But yeah, that reminds me. A friend of mine always says, humans do human things, right? And
Yes.
unfortunately, I think we have to deal with it. But I don't know. I'd be kind of interested in hear how the two of you would have handled that. Either one of those situations, right? You have a trainee who things just kind of blow up in the universe, and it's on every news channel, every earned media outlet in the world, about some of these behaviors. But how do you even approach that?
I don't know if there's a preventative standpoint. Unfortunately, there has to be a sacrificial lamb that does something or maybe makes the mistake for others to learn from. And then from there, it would be basically coaching, social media coaching, or if you're doing, media training, interviews, kind of allowing these students to step into that professional scope of you are in medical school and you should take things a little bit more seriously. Know that everyone has a camera in their pocket. So just be mindful of things. But I don't know if there's any preventative measures after, someone has already made the mistake.
Right. Well,
Right. I would agree. I would agree with Rachel. And I think that from a communication standpoint, our role would be to protect the institution,
Hmm.
protect the residency program, not necessarily protect the student or
Right.
the resident. So just make it abundantly clear that this individual's actions and opinions do not reflect the institution. And then step in, as Rachel said, and help provide that coaching to the individual to prevent this from happening in the future.
Mhm.
yeah, good point. So yeah, I'll tell you, the job of communication, leaders, are not easy especially with medical schools. Just like this past year, I think it was about a year ago, we had a medical school in Arizona where you had a student club, or at least I think it was a student club that was developing or whatever, and they wanted to, take a very political stance on, the abortion issue. I believe they wanted to do a pro-life, chapter, and then there was some, pushback. But of course, it went up to, national media in terms of attention. And of course, we saw this past year, all the stuff that's going on in the Middle East and, different schools. Heck, there was even a congressional investigation of, top universities in America, how they handled it. And, of course, and I see both sides of it, right? I see the, freedom of speech side. I also see the academic freedom side. And I also see the need to protect the academic institution from these things. So, from a communications perspective, how would you have approached, any of these situations? Yeah.
Yeah, we've actually dealt with these two topics here at ICOM. We've had students participate in pro-Palestine and pro-Israel, rallies downtown at the state capitol, and it hasn't reflected positively or negatively upon us as an institution because these students participate at their own as themselves as individuals. They do not go and represent the school. They don't wear ICOM apparel. Not that we ask them not to, they just don't. And I feel like this new generation of students that we have in medical school are really, really passionate. They want to be change makers. They see themselves as not just caring for their community as a physician, but as an advocate for their patients, and their patients will come from all walks of life. And it's important that I think patients see themselves and in their physician, or whoever they trust their care to. I know that's something that's important to me. Whenever I'm a patient, I try to find a physician who I can relate to, or who I know will support me. And so I feel like students today take that very seriously. And it's exciting. It's a breath of fresh air that they're so passionate about these topics, and we don't want to stifle them. We want to encourage them and be the change makers and have their voices be heard. And so it's been nothing but positive for us. Same with the abortion stance. I'm in Idaho. Idaho is notoriously red. We have the abortion ban, and a lot of ER doctors are on our faculty, and they struggle, with it as well. And it's great because academics is a place where you can have these conversations, and really go deep into these topics and make a difference. And it's not our job as an institution to stifle that, but rather to encourage it. And I'm really proud that that's something that we do here.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I completely understand what you say, but, isn't there a little bit of a challenge? Because, some people want to try to leverage, I should say the larger public image of the institution, especially a medical school, and they want to try to use that as a platform to, amplify their voice, right? As Americans, we all have a voice, we all have a vote, right? We all have the chance to do it. But is that necessarily true? I know that we had the university president at Harvard, testify in front of Congress, and everybody was wanting to, take political stances at, Harvard. I know Columbia had some, issues this past year, but is that really the right of a student to leverage the institution to amplify their voice? I don't know. My personal feeling is that I don't think institutions should really have political opinions. I mean, so, OCOM, we actually do not have any political opinions except for things that are directly impacting our mission. And, I certainly wouldn't want anybody to represent OCOM, trying to say, one, political opinion versus another, because that's not directly in line with the institution. Now, if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, we're going to, take away the ability of OCOM to, train, physicians," then, of course, that's a whole different, story. But I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And at ICOM, we don't take any political positions as well. We don't release statements on things, on greater socio-political topics, because we are a medical school and not everything applies to us. And so we don't share statements of that nature. We don't share our position on things because we're an institution comprised of individuals, and we're not one collective voice representing ICOM on a multitude of topics. So we don't do that. Um, and I would agree that it's not in the best interest of the institution to have one individual leverage the institution to advance their political agenda. And so that's why I'm very happy and proud that our students do it as individuals. They don't use our name. They don't leverage the institution in that way. They're more so doing it from their perspective as an individual who is studying medicine.
I agree with what you guys have both said. There's nothing that I could really echo that more than just I agree with you, and letting the students have their own voice, their own opinions, or their own opinions. But again, remembering that when they step into that professional field, if you're pro something, you can be pro something as long as it's not anti or stepping on someone else. So believe what you believe in, but not at the cost of diminishing someone else's opinion.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Good point. So, I wanted to, kind of transition a little bit because, obviously communications also involves, marketing and those aspects. And, it seems like, in 2021, we actually had the highest number ever of applicants to medical schools, both DO as well as MD medical schools in the United States. They call it the Fauci effect. And then since then, we've actually had a little bit of a plateau effect or leveling off. Some people say it has, this enrollment cliff, with the demographics and less people going into undergraduate universities over the years. And, some of that has to do with, populations differences. Although interesting, in the South, we haven't seen a change in the enrollment cliff. We have, really the numbers of graduates from undergraduates, hasn't really changed. But anyway, so I was just a little curious to hear from both of you what your perspectives are on marketing for medical schools in this new era, right? In this era where we do have less total number of applicants per medical school spot, And, what are things that we should be doing to encourage interest in folks going to medical school and, over this period of time? I mean, I would imagine this is a pendulum. It may swing back, but obviously we have to, you know, we have, reasons to, want folks to advance our mission and, train folks to be, caring and competent physicians. So, what are things that you guys are thinking of in terms of, engaging with this challenge?
I think there's a lot of information that's out there to be able to prepare for the pendulum to swing each way. Um, in previous places, there was like a certain grade level. We were trying to get enrollment, trying to do all sorts of marketing, but it was like the lowest birth rate that year. So really, just picking at nothing. Where these students who were born in, I don't know, 2008 or 2009, they just didn't exist. So understanding basically enrollment possibility for those years is also how we can understand, okay, this will actually be a low pendulum year because the students may not exist. Now, it's different because everyone at medical school is 100% a different age. They could be in a different um, time of their life where they're encouraged or have the time or the financial status to be able to go to medical school. So it is different. The pendulum could be way different every single year. But with that, I think what's really important is to, I don't necessarily want to say popularize being a doctor or being a DO, but at the same time, there are so many opportunities where I think one of your former students, Tiffany DiPietro, she's got a great Instagram account and she's talking about her DO experience and what she's done and how she's been able to accomplish all of the things that she's done in her life. And it's really just entertainment. It's not just slamming, you should be a doctor, down your throat. It's just making it accessible to anyone and being inspiring to do that. So having the opportunity to have an informal way, like an Instagram or something like that, where you're talking to people, could help get the word out and actually motivate others to say, oh, well, if she could do it, maybe I can do it too. So I think that would be a great organic marketing way to see if there's any alumni. We don't have alumni yet, but be able to share their story and their experience from an organic perspective.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
thoughts.
definitely.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
Um, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and how about you, Stephanie? Especially in a state that's got a relatively low population. Although the nice thing is you're the only medical school, the first medical school in the state of Idaho, right? So how do you approach that?
Yeah, so only about a third of our students are actually from Idaho. So yeah, we're definitely in Idaho, but I think this year our cohort comes from 43 states, so a wide variety of states represented here on our campus. It's funny because I feel like the landscape has changed so much over the 7 years that I've been involved in the comm world. Um, so for about 6 years, I was able to do everything organically. We didn't do advertising, paid advertising. Everything was just boots on the ground, organic, social media outreach coupled with in-person visits and virtual visits from our recruiter. And I feel like with the growth of colleges of medicine, both DO and MD, over the last decade, it's just heightened competition, right? Especially here in Idaho, we've had um, another comm open in Utah. Another one was just announced at BYU in Provo, Utah, and then two to the north in Montana. So, in a region that didn't have a lot of medical schools to choose from, now there are a variety of options. And that's great to see for prospective students because they'll be able to choose the right institution for them. And we get to help them make that choice by pitching what we have to offer them. And that's really great because as institutions, we get to share our stories, share our outcomes, and hopefully it resonates with applicants for sure. I think an exciting thing that I've started recently here at ICOM is the integration of digital marketing. So now I'm diving into the world of SEO and SEM, so search engine optimization, search engine marketing, really using data that we are collecting from applicants and seeing where are the hotspots and how can we reach students or prospective students in those areas and have them hear about us and share our story with them. And it's been very fruitful. I do think that the enrollment cliff is it's pretty daunting, and our admissions team has let us know that this enrollment cliff is coming. They've been letting us know for the last few years, and so we're right in the thick of it. So the pool is getting a little smaller, right? So it's just making sure that people are finding the institutions that will allow them to flourish as students, and making sure that it's a great fit mutually, both for the school and for the applicant.
Excellent. Hey, and thank you for sharing about BYU. I had no idea. So that's big news that BYU is starting their own medical school.
Yeah,
Interesting.
they just announced it, I
Yeah.
think last week or the week before. They didn't say whether it was an MD or a DO school. I'm assuming MD. And they didn't give a timeline yet. So it's all TBD. They just announced that they were going to move forward with that initiative.
Yeah. And interesting. And BYU, I know regionally for you all, that's a decent sized feeder school. And I know nationally, it's not an insignificant size in terms of a feeder school for medical schools nationally. So that's huge news. So yeah,
Right. Utah is a huge feeder state.
yeah. Well, you mentioned earned media, and in fact, Rachel and I've been talking about this too. Historically, folks would use like Twitter, I guess now called X, as their place to post out if they really want to try to entice earned media from reporters. And then most reporters would use that. I'm sure when you were at Channel 6, there in Idaho, that was probably your social media account for getting news and leads for stories and stuff like that. But now with the decline of Twitter, I mean, how do you get what's the best way to get earned media nowadays? Yeah.
Yeah, it's proven really difficult too. And I'm not sure whether it's because the landscape has changed with X or that the landscape is changing in newsrooms across the country. I mean, just as we're experiencing an enrollment cliff, I feel like the same is happening for newsrooms across the country where staff is getting cut. Perhaps fewer people going or wanting to go into journalism just because it's been so, I feel like, contentious over the last several years. It's a contentious industry to be in. And so for me personally, I've been having to rely on personal contacts that I had made throughout my time as a reporter. And even those are starting to dwindle because as people move on, go to different markets, or like me, leave, transition into a different industry, it's becoming harder and harder to do. So it takes a little extra work for the communications officer at an institution to cultivate those relationships, keep track of active rosters of reporters at which stations or which papers, making sure those are updated frequently. And then I think even more important, developing relationships with the editors and producers, the people who seem to hang out at the news stations longer than a standard reporter would. I think that's what's benefited me the most is having relationships with senior editors, producers, because those have the longevity versus my relationships with reporters who have moved on to different states and different markets.
Yeah. You know, and I think you bring up a good point about investigative journalists, right? Rachel and I've talked about this many times. In the Orlando metropolitan statistical area, we have very few investigative journalists. I mean, certainly there's people that are investigative journalists, but I mean, at least in my sense of the world, where folks take those deep dives, they do the two source investigation on every story, and they dig deep, and then they do the FOIA request, public information request, and those type of things. It seems like I guess with the finances and the economics of journalism, that just it seems like it's just going away, right? Or at least diminishing, somewhat. So so I wonder. I mean, heck, is it just more internally produced content, or is it we just have to, focus on getting more packages. I mean, heck, when we send out something, I mean, we have B-roll for the, for the earned media. We have, the press release. We have, the, talking points. I mean, heck, it's pretty much a package deal,
Right.
in some of our stories. And even then, sometimes it's tough to even get the earned media for those stories. So, but yeah, so I wonder. And then, I'm starting to see blogs, folks kind of use more blogs nowadays and just kind of self-produce stuff and, just push it through their channel and just hope for, organic growth of the stories and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely changed, right? So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
definitely changed. And I feel like that's where the beauty of social media comes in. Um, because you could create an awesome VOSAT or package and send it out to your contact media contact list. And I'm running into the same issues where sometimes they won't air it for whatever reason. And so we can transition that content over to our social media platforms and push out the story that way. And then using SEO and SEM, make sure that it's reaching our intended audience or our target audience. And that way we get the most bang for our buck anyway. Because if you think of it, who's sitting at home watching the 5 o'clock news? Is that really the target audience that we want to reach to come to medical school? Maybe, maybe not. So focusing our efforts on our social media platforms allows us to reach our target audience in
Yeah.
a more effective way.
That's a really good point of who the actual target audience is for, those news stations to come out or get this really nice packaged item for them just to plug and play. But, is it our target audience? Who knows? Because the messages that we receive sometimes on our Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger is, hey, my daughter's really interested. Who should she call? And I get that a lot. So, whether it's our direct or indirect, it's still important to have some kind of presence. But at the same time, a lot of times those sponsored ads on Instagram or even TikTok, sometimes they really just get in there. So it got to spread the wealth across all of the social media platforms. But I think being present and focused and working on those relationships with the news media, the print media, all sorts of different avenues definitely helps in general elevate your platform and your foundation.
For
Now,
sure. And I love that you mentioned the DMs that you get on Facebook and it being
Yes.
a parent of a prospective student, because that shows you the shift in audience, right?
Mhm.
So our prospective students are not on Facebook. They could care less about Facebook, but we maintain a strong presence on Facebook because it's the parents,
Mhm.
right? It's the
Yep.
family, it's the support system of the student who would inevitably be going to the school.
Right.
Um, but most of our targeted effort is in Instagram.
Mhm.
And then also recently we've started doing TikTok as well, targeting people. That's just where the new generations are.
Mhm.
Those are the platforms they prefer.
so you guys think that's the number one and number two, Instagram and TikTok right now?
Oh no,
For
I
me,
feel a TikTok account coming.
Yeah, we don't have a TikTok. We need a TikTok.
We don't.
Yeah.
I do. So let me ask you this. On the TikTok, I feel like if I ever get on there, I kind of just doom scroll and I scroll forever and ever. And I don't, my perspective, I don't know. I've never been a DO candidate or anything like that. Do you think the audience is there, or do you think it would just at least somewhat be there to kind of infiltrate and maybe sprout some ideas for the future? Like, is that kind of the thought process in creating the TikTok? Is it to be relevant? Is it to kind of get them in early? Just small ideas? What was your thought?
all of the above. And then also when you're doing targeted marketing, you have the ability to choose who sees your content, right?
Mhm.
So we are looking at a specific age group. We're looking at a specific academic history. So people who are in undergrad, people who are, you can go even further and say pre-med students. You
Mhm.
could organize by income. You can organize by a variety of different things. You could target students from our feeder institutions, which is what we do too. So you can get very targeted with it. But then also there's beauty in the organic reach as well to inspire
Right.
others. But if you want an immediate ROI, you're going to want to do the focused, targeted. marketing.
Now, for I'd say probably the last 10 years, I've heard this from, many folks that video is king. Um, in terms of social media engagement, in terms of communications, marketing engagement. Is that still true? And maybe it is, I guess, if TikTok's, are becoming our number 2 platform, medical education marketing, I mean, is it that important to have, high quality produced video? Is it any video? What are your thoughts?
Oh
I
man.
would say it's vertical video. Vertical video is king because
Yes,
just because the
absolutely.
audience that you're trying to reach, that particular age group, you are on your phone like this scrolling, right? And so if you see a vertical video, it's more appealing. I even now as a consumer, if I see a horizontal that's, in vertical format, I'm like, oh, I don't want to see this. And I keep scrolling. So I think it's just consumer behavior. And so for me, I've been placing emphasis on vertical video.
hmm And with that being said, there's more organic opportunities with the vertical video, meaning everyone has their iPhone or their high quality cameras on their phone at the ready. So you can um, go right down to the anatomy lab and film a student and get things right on your phone, edit it, and hopefully 2 seconds later post it on Instagram. But you have a nice message that goes along with it. But the video tells a story without having a need for a caption. But you always want to add, that small narrative to help tell the story. But at the same time, you're right. The vertical video is king, more organic.
Oh, so it's interesting. So you think that we should be doing our, professionally produced video for marketing communications vertically instead of horizontally now?
I always have my
Yeah.
team shoot a vertical cut.
Interesting.
So they're doing both.
Huh.
hmm You
Interesting.
just have to ask.
Oh, by the way, Stephanie, Rachel and I were admiring your number of views for your 360 tour. I think it was Ellie Matthews had done
Yeah.
facilities tour using a 360 camera, and I think you'd had like 167,000 views in YouTube. So we were a little jealous of that. So yeah, you may or may not see a 360 video of OCOM. So, but that's interesting, right? Vertical, maybe 360, will take off. I don't know.
For sure. I would love to see a 360 of your school. Just selfishly, I would love that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's funny. It was kind of difficult to shoot because we had like 3 or 4 different cameras going off on the same time. Ellie's actually holding one on like a pole. You can't see it
Mhm.
really. But it was a challenging shoot, but I think it was a really great one. We're gonna have to update it because we're doing some construction, and so that's a little outdated for us, but we'll have to do another one. People really like it.
Yeah, they do. 100,000 plus really like it. So that's
And it's
great.
so
You've
funny.
inspired.
Yeah, and like even going back to Rachel's point about shooting stuff on your phone, one of the highest viewed Instagram reels that we have wasn't even professionally shot. We, our anatomy team did a donor recognition ceremony at the end of the academic year this earlier this spring. And I just I didn't have the video team on call that day, and so I just went down with my little iPhone 14, shot everything vertically. Didn't have any audio narration, just did text narration and put some music on it, and it's one of the reels with the highest views, and it was just something that happened organically
Yeah.
just because I felt like doing it.
Wow. And by the way, how many views? Do you recall?
4,500.
It's pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's good.
for a non-boosted,
hmm
not advertisement, strictly organic post.
Excellent.
That's kind of, I don't know if it's going to be, evergreen to mention like the Olympics, but, they had the certain competition where this gal had all the garb with the goggles and the viewfinders and all sorts of thing. And she was really, really just made up with all this high tech gear. And then there was this other gentleman who just kind of came in and did his thing with no extra, no accoutrements and, stuff like that. And he did well. But the meme is the marketing professionals when they do paid versus organic. And the organic a lot of times outperforms the paid. So it's nice to be true to yourself and do what you think is right to tell a story and not always have to go the paid route and, the special effects and all that kind of stuff. It's great to have a mix because you never know what's going to be the best performing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Authenticity seems to be,
Yes.
very important for everybody nowadays, right? In this area of AI, I think
Hmm.
people are looking for authenticity. So, yeah, another reason for us not to edit these podcasts or anything, just let it go. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, this was a great show. It was so good, having you both on here. Since I'll start with Stephanie. Anything you want to plug or talk about, with you or ICOM before we call it a show?
No, not really. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like we just barely scratched the surface of like med school communication. We might have to do a part two sometime.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, this is so great. And that's the coolest thing about medical schools, because it's really like a whole universe, right? For a medical school to function, everything has to work, facilities, communication, IT, of course, academics, admissions, it's all connected too. So anyway, it was such a pleasure and honor to have you on, Stephanie. Thanks for being with us today. And Rachel Freeman, how about you? Anything you want to plug or talk about today?
Oh
Yeah.
man, I feel a TikTok coming account or account coming, so we'll definitely work on that. But I appreciate Stephanie for being such a great resource, and me kind of reaching out to her and just being asking all the questions. So like I really appreciate it, and comms in the medical schools are a whole different world in and of itself. So I think as long as we can support each other in best practices, we're all after the same goal. So thank you to Stephanie, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do here at OCOM.
Excellent. Appreciative of you both. And, of course, we had the best in the business today, the two best communication experts in our profession. So thank you both for being on here today. Really appreciate it. And with that, it's the end of episode 0 for our OCOM's first podcast. So thanks again for both being on here today.
Thank you, Dr.
Exciting.
Hasty.
Congratulations on this launch of the podcast. I'm excited to tune in and be a frequent listener. And thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thanks again. Bye-bye.